welcome, and thank you for allowing us to share this quiet time with you. This audiobook novel is intended as a gentle companion, a way to help weave a peaceful atmosphere around you as you unwind. Our hope is to provide a sanctuary of calm, a quiet space for your mind to rest at the end of the day. In this audiobook novel, A Journal of Quiet Garden Noticings, we will step into the hushed tranquility of a small walled garden. We will join Leo in his simple daily ritual of quiet observation, where the smallest details, the texture of moss, the path of a snail, the soft hum of bees, become sources of profound peace and wonder. Should you find comfort here and wish for more moments like this, perhaps consider liking and subscribing before you settle in fully. It allows others to discover this peaceful space as well. And now take a soft breath, let your shoulders relax, and allow yourself to be guided into the quiet beauty of the garden. Chapter 1. The Sun-Warmed Bench. The old stone path that led from the cottage door to the garden was cool underfoot, even as the late morning sun began to assert its gentle warmth. Each stone was familiar, its surface worn smooth by years of passage, its edges softened by creeping patches of moss. Leo moved slowly, his steps measured and quiet, the only sound a soft scuff against the stone, a gentle disturbance in the garden's prevailing stillness. The air itself felt soft, carrying the faint, clean scent of damp earth and the sweet perfume of distant honeysuckle climbing the far wall. He was heading for his destination, a place of quiet ritual. There it was, nestled under the sprawling branches of the old apple tree, the bench. It was made of simple weathered wood, turned a silvery gray by countless seasons of sun and rain. Today, a wide, generous patch of sunlight fell directly across its seat, transforming the aged wood into a welcoming island of warmth. As Leo approached, a small sparrow, who had been perched on the backrest, took flight with a soft flutter of wings, its departure leaving the scene in perfect tranquility. The garden seemed to exhale in the quiet that followed. He sat, and the bench offered its familiar gentle creak, a sound of welcome, of settling in. The warmth of the sun-soaked wood seeped through his clothes, a pleasant spreading sensation across his back. He let his hands rest on the seat beside him, feeling the slightly rough, grainy texture of the wood, its surface filled with the tiny ridges and valleys of its history. Above, the leaves of the apple tree rustled in a barely there breeze, their movement creating a slow, mesmerizing dance of light and shadow on the ground before him. A single dappled spot of light trembled on the back of his hand. From the simple canvas bag at his side, he withdrew his journal. It was a comforting weight in his hands, its cover a dark green cloth, soft and slightly frayed at the corners. He ran a thumb over the cover's smooth, yielding surface before opening it. The pages inside were thick and creamy, and they made a soft, satisfying rustle as he turned to a fresh, empty spread. The air held the faintest scent of old paper and the graphite from his previous sketches, a smell that was intertwined with the garden's own peaceful aroma. He took a slow, deep breath, the kind he always took before beginning, It was a way of marking the transition from doing to simply being, a conscious decision to attune himself to the garden's quiet rhythm. His gaze drifted, not searching for anything in particular, but simply allowing itself to be drawn. It passed over the tall stalks of delphiniums, their blue flowers like small pieces of the sky, and across the soft green expanse of the small lawn. He was in no hurry. The garden had all the time in the world, and for now, so did he. His eyes came to rest on a large flat stone at the base of the apple tree. Upon it grew a thriving colony of moss. In the direct sunlight, it was not merely green. It was a complex tapestry of color. There were shades of deep forest green in its shaded crevices, vibrant lime where the sun hit it directly, and even tiny flecks of gold and chartreuse. It looked like a miniature velvet landscape, soft and inviting. This, he decided, would be the first noticing of the day. He picked up the soft graphite pencil that was tucked into the journal spine. Its wooden barrel was smooth and cool against his fingers. He looked from the moss to the empty page, then back again. He wasn't trying to create a perfect botanical illustration, but rather to capture the feeling of it, the softness, the density, the way it clung so tenaciously to the hard surface of the stone. His gaze softened, taking in the whole of its form, the gentle roundness of its edges. With a quiet sense of purpose, his hand began to move. The pencil made a faint, whispering sound as its tip met the paper. He started with a light, looping outline, suggesting the moss's gentle, mounded shape. Then, with small, soft strokes, he began to build up the texture, creating layers of shading that hinted at the deep, plush pile of the living plant. The world outside the garden, outside this simple act of observation, simply fell away, leaving only the sun, the bench, the journal, and the quiet, wondrous life of the moss on the stone. Chapter 2. The Snail's Silver Path. After some time spent observing the moss, Leo closed his journal, placing it beside him on the warm bench. He allowed his gaze to wander once more, his attention now free to drift. The sun had moved slightly higher in the sky, and the patterns of light and shadow under the apple tree had shifted, creating a new geography on the garden floor. A gentle breeze, a little more assertive now, stirred the broad-ribbed leaves of a hosta plant growing in a shaded patch near the brick wall. It was on one of those leaves that a glint of light caught his eye. He rose from the bench, the wood giving another soft creak, and walked quietly over to the plant. Kneeling on the soft grass, he peered closer. There, traversing the waxy, deep green surface of a hosta leaf, was a delicate, shimmering line, the unmistakable trail of a snail. It caught the ambient light and broke it into faint, pearlescent colors, a temporary inscription of a slow and steady journey. The trail led from the leaf's edge to its center, a perfect, glistening record of silent effort. Following the trail with his eyes, he soon found its creator, a small garden snail, its shell, a beautiful whorled pattern of pale brown and cream, was moving with an unhurried grace that was mesmerizing to watch. Its two upper tentacles, long and delicate, swayed gently from side to side, sensing the air, while the two shorter ones below seemed to test the surface before it. The snail's body, a soft, translucent gray, rippled with the muscular effort of its movement, a slow, fluid wave of motion that was profoundly peaceful. Leo settled down on the grass, content to simply watch. He leaned his back against the warm brick of the garden wall, its rough texture a pleasant pressure against his shoulders. From this low vantage point, the garden took on a new perspective. The blades of grass were a miniature forest, and the hosta leaf was a vast green plain for the snail to cross. The sounds of the garden were different here, too. He could hear the low hum of a bee somewhere nearby, a sound felt as much as heard, and the almost imperceptible rustle of the hosta leaves as the air moved through them. He reached out a single finger, not to touch the snail, but to feel the surface of the leaf it was on. It was cool and smooth, with a slightly waxy coating that felt slick against his skin. The leaf's prominent veins stood out in slight relief, creating tiny hills and valleys for the snail to navigate. He imagined the world from the snail's perspective, a world of texture and dampness, of slow exploration where a single leaf could be an entire day's travel. There was a simple, profound honesty in its purpose: to move, to eat, to be. He watched as the snail reached a dewdrop that still lingered in the cup of the leaf. A perfect, clear sphere of water. The snail paused, its tentacles gently touching the edge of the drop before it began to drink, its tiny mouth working at the water's surface. It was a small, quiet moment of survival and sustenance, an act of life happening completely without audience, save for him. The sight brought a soft, quiet feeling of contentment. This was the garden's secret life, the one that unfolded when one was still enough to see it. He thought about opening his journal again to sketch the scene, but decided against it. Some moments, he felt, were meant just for observation, for being present with what was happening. To draw it would be to distance himself from it, to turn it into a memory before it was even over. Instead, he simply continued to watch, his breathing slow and even, matching the unhurried rhythm of the small creature before him. He was a silent companion on its journey. The snail eventually reached the other side of the leaf and disappeared beneath its cool green shade. The silver path it left behind remained, glistening in the soft light. Leo stayed where he was for a few moments longer, feeling the warmth of the brick wall and listening to the quiet symphony of the garden. The encounter had been a gentle reminder that even in the smallest of movements, there was a world of beauty and purpose, waiting patiently to be noticed. Chapter 3. The Unfurling Fern. Leaving the hosta plant and its memory of the snail's journey, Leo's attention was drawn towards a cooler, shadier part of the garden. Tucked away against the north-facing wall, where the sunlight was always indirect and gentle, grew a lush patch of ferns. Their vibrant green was a deep and restful color, a stark contrast to the sunnier parts of the garden. Here the air was stiller, and it carried the distinct, clean scent of damp earth and decaying leaves, the smell of life regenerating itself. He approached the ferns quietly, his footsteps soft on the mossy ground that thrived in this shaded corner. The mature ferns stood tall and graceful, their fronds arching outwards like delicate green fountains. He admired their complex structure, the way each frond was a perfect, repeating pattern of smaller leaves, each one serrated and precise. They were ancient plants, and they seemed to carry an air of quiet, timeless wisdom. The deep shade they cast made the area feel like a hidden sanctuary within the larger sanctuary of the garden. His gaze, however, was drawn downwards to the base of the plants where new life was emerging from the soil. There, amongst the dark, rich earth, were several tightly coiled fiddleheads. They were perfect spirals, clenched fists of future growth, their surfaces covered in a soft, silvery fuzz. They seemed to hold a potent energy, a promise of the elegant fronds they would soon become. There was a powerful sense of anticipation in their tightly wound forms. Leo knelt down, bringing his face closer to one particularly fine specimen. It was a marvel of natural geometry, the spiral so perfect and precise. He could see the individual segments of the future frond, all packed neatly together, waiting for the right moment to begin their slow, deliberate process of unfurling. The soft, downy coating seemed to protect the delicate structure within, a temporary blanket against the world. He reached out and very gently, with the tip of his finger, touched the top of the coil. It felt firm and alive, cool and slightly damp. He decided this was a moment worthy of the journal. Retrieving it from the bench, he returned to the fern patch and sat on a smooth, flat stone nearby. Opening to a fresh page, he picked up his pencil. He wanted to capture the fiddlehead not just as it looked, but as it felt, full of potential, a tightly wound spring of life. He began to sketch its perfect spiral, his pencil strokes slow and careful, trying to replicate the elegant curve. He used the side of the graphite tip to suggest the soft, fuzzy texture covering its surface. While he drew, he became more aware of the sensory details of this little corner. The air here was noticeably cooler on his skin, a pleasant relief from the open sun. The smell of the earth was stronger, a rich, loamy scent that spoke of moisture and nutrients. He could hear the faint, almost inaudible drip of water from a large fern frond above him, releasing the last of the morning's dew onto the ground below. It was a quiet, contained world, governed by shade and moisture. After capturing the form of the fiddlehead, he shifted his focus to a fully grown frond nearby. He let his fingers trail along its length, feeling the delicate feathered edges of the leaflets. It felt like stroking a soft feather, yet it was resilient and strong. He turned his attention back to his journal and drew a small section of the mature frond next to his sketch of the fiddlehead, a side-by-side comparison of potential and fulfillment. The page was a quiet story of growth, of a life cycle captured in two simple drawings. He remained there for a long while, the open journal resting on his knees. The peace of this shaded corner was profound. There were no grand events here, only the slow, silent, and magnificent process of life unfolding at its own pace. The ferns asked for nothing but shade and water, and in return they offered a deep and abiding sense of tranquility. It was a fair exchange, he thought, a simple and beautiful contract with the natural world. Chapter 4. The Hum of Lavender. The sun reached its highest point, warming the garden to a pleasant, comfortable temperature. Moving from the cool shade of the ferns, Leo was drawn by a gentle, resonant sound. It was a low, steady hum, a sound that was both industrious and deeply calming. It led him to a large, sprawling lavender bush near the center of the garden, its silvery green foliage topped with a haze of pale purple blossoms. The air around it was thick with the plant's clean, herbaceous scent, a perfume that seemed to wash over him and quiet the mind. The source of the hum was immediately apparent. The lavender bush was alive with bees. Not just one or two, but dozens of them, mostly large, fuzzy bumblebees, their black and yellow bodies moving with a slow, deliberate purpose. They seemed to be in a state of bliss, drifting from one slender stalk to another, ignoring his presence completely. They were entirely absorbed in their gentle work, a community moving in a peaceful, uncoordinated harmony that was mesmerizing to watch. Leo found a comfortable spot on the grass a few feet away, close enough to observe, but not so close as to disturb them. He sat with his back against the trunk of the apple tree, its rough bark a solid presence behind him. From here, he had a perfect view of the bees' dance. They would land softly on a spike of blossoms, their weight causing the stalk to dip slightly. They would methodically work their way up the spike, visiting each tiny flower with a focused intensity, their legs and fuzzy undersides becoming dusted with a fine, bright yellow pollen. The sound was the most captivating part. It wasn't a frantic buzzing, but a deep, sonorous hum that vibrated in the air. It was the sound of summer, of life, of a garden in full, quiet function. He closed his eyes for a moment, letting the sound wash over him. It seemed to resonate within his own chest, a gentle, thrumming mantra that eased away any lingering thoughts, leaving only the present moment, the warmth of the sun, the scent of lavender, and this profound, peaceful hum. He opened his eyes again and focused on a single bee. It was particularly large and seemed almost drunk on the abundance of nectar. It moved more slowly than the others, taking its time at each blossom. He could see the fine, almost invisible hairs on its body, each one coated in the golden dust of pollen. He watched as it groomed itself mid-air, its tiny legs brushing the pollen from its antennae before it moved on to the next flower. It was a small, intricate ballet of survival and symbiosis. The bee fed itself, and in doing so, it gave life to the garden. This, too, deserved a place in the journal. He opened it on his lap, the pages warmed by the sun. He didn't try to draw a bee. Their movement was too constant, their forms too complex for a quick sketch. Instead, he decided to write. He wanted to describe the sound, the color, the feeling of the scene. His pencil moved across the page, the soft scratching sound almost lost beneath the hum of the bees. He wrote about the color of the lavender, a purple so soft it was almost gray, and the contrasting, vibrant yellow of the pollen. He described the hum not as a noise, but as a texture in the air, a warmth that you could feel. He wrote about the way the bees moved, a slow and hovering dance, a physical manifestation of contentment. The act of writing it down helped to deepen his observation, forcing him to find words for sensations that were almost beyond language. It was a way of honoring the moment, of giving it a more permanent form. He sat there for what felt like a long time, the pencil resting on the page. The sun was warm on his face. The scent of lavender was a constant, soothing presence, and the air vibrated with the gentle energy of the bees. It was a moment of perfect synthesis where all the senses were engaged in a single peaceful experience. The garden was not just a place of quiet, but a place of gentle, purposeful life. And he was grateful to be a quiet witness to it all. Chapter 5. Water on Stone. As the afternoon began its slow descent towards evening, the quality of the light in the garden changed. The brilliant, direct sunlight softened, turning a warmer, more golden hue. Long shadows began to stretch from the base of the apple tree and the tall brick walls, painting the lawn in broad, cool strokes. A new quietness settled over the garden as the bees retreated from the lavender and the bird song became more intermittent. It was a time of transition, a gentle winding down of the day. Leo felt this shift and knew it was time for one final simple task. He rose from his spot by the tree and walked to a small weathered wooden barrel near the cottage door that collected rainwater. He picked up a small dark green watering can, its metal body cool to the touch. He dipped it into the barrel, and the can filled with a low, gurgling sound, the water clear and soft. The can felt heavy and balanced in his hand as he carried it back into the garden. His destination was a collection of shallow terracotta pots arranged on a low stone ledge. They were filled with a variety of succulents, some with thick, fleshy leaves arranged in rosettes, others with spiky, architectural forms. Among the plants, he had placed several smooth gray river stones, their rounded shapes a pleasing contrast to the pointed leaves of the succulents. The soil in the pots looked dry, a pale, dusty brown. They were thirsty. He tilted the watering can, and a gentle stream of water emerged from its spout. He directed the flow to the base of the first plant. The sound the water made as it hit the dry soil was soft and satisfying, a gentle hiss followed by a deeper, soaking sound. He watched as the parched earth drank greedily, its color instantly changing from pale brown to a rich, dark chocolate. The water pooled for a moment before disappearing completely, absorbed into the soil. He moved from one pot to the next, repeating the quiet ritual. Each plant received its share of the cool, clear water. He took his time, ensuring the water soaked deep into the pot rather than just running over the surface. He paid close attention to the sound, a quiet music that was unique to this task. The gentle patter of water on a fleshy leaf, the soft rush as it flowed over a smooth stone, the whisper as it sank into the porous earth. The water also transformed the stones he had placed in the pots. When dry, they were a uniform, matte gray. But as the cool water washed over them, Their hidden colors were revealed. Veins of darker gray and flecks of white quartz became visible, their patterns stark and beautiful against the wet, dark surface. They glistened in the soft afternoon light, looking as though they had just been plucked from a riverbed. It was a small magical transformation, a secret revealed by a simple stream of water. After the last pot was watered, he set the now light watering can down. A clean, earthy scent rose from the damp soil, mingling with the faint, lingering perfume of the lavender. He stood for a moment, simply observing his work. The succulents seemed to stand a little taller, their colors more vibrant against the dark, damp soil. The wet stones gleamed with a quiet beauty. It was a scene of simple order and care, and it brought with it a deep sense of quiet satisfaction. He returned to the bench and picked up his journal one last time. He didn't write or draw, but simply placed a single small lavender blossom he'd found on the path between the last two pages, a fragrant memento of the day. He then closed the book, the soft thud of the cover a sound of completion. The cool evening air was beginning to settle in the garden, a soft blanket descending. The day of quiet noticings was over, leaving behind a feeling of profound peace and a gentle connection to the small, beautiful world within the garden walls.